Healthy love doesn't always feel safe. For a surprising number of gay men, it feels suspicious, not because it's boring, not because it's missing passion, but because it doesn't activate the emotional alarms they've learned to mistake for intimacy. That realization changes everything, because most people assume they would recognize healthy love the moment it arrives. But emotional conditioning doesn't work that way. You recognize what your nervous system has rehearsed, not necessarily what your heart actually needs. And for many gay men, the first experiences of attraction weren't just about desire. They were about uncertainty, about hiding, about wondering whether looking at someone for 1 second too long could expose everything. Long before there was dating, there was scanning, watching, calculating, editing yourself before anyone else could. Over time, that survival instinct quietly slips into adulthood. You stop looking for emotional safety. You start looking for emotional familiarity, even when familiarity hurts. That's why healthy love can feel strangely empty. Not because it is, because your mind keeps waiting for the danger that never arrives. And silence starts feeling louder than chaos. Most people imagine emotional wounds as dramatic events. One terrible breakup, one betrayal, one rejection. But many emotional patterns begin much earlier. They grow from hundreds of tiny moments. The joke that made you laugh while secretly wondering if it was about you. The family conversation where everyone talked about future girlfriends without realizing you had already stopped imagining one. The friendship where you measured every word because sounding too interested carried risks. None of these moments look traumatic by themselves, but together, they quietly teach one lesson. Love isn't just something you feel. It's something you have to survive. That lesson doesn't disappear once you're out. It follows you into every relationship, especially the healthy ones. Because healthy love removes something your nervous system has become addicted to. Uncertainty. Think about how modern dating often begins. A notification. A swipe. A profile carefully edited into something desirable. People spend hours optimizing photographs, while revealing almost nothing emotionally. We have become incredibly skilled at attracting attention, not nearly as skilled at creating emotional safety. That matters, because attention creates excitement. Safety creates intimacy. Those aren't the same thing. Yet they're constantly confused, especially in environments where validation is always one message away, or one silence away. The apps don't just encourage connection. They encourage comparison. Who replied faster? Who viewed your profile? Who disappeared? Who suddenly came back? Without realizing it, people begin measuring their emotional worth through tiny digital behaviors. Every delayed response becomes a story. Every unread message becomes evidence. Every match becomes temporary relief. Eventually, your nervous system starts confusing unpredictability with chemistry. Not because unpredictability feels good, because uncertainty feels familiar. Healthy love interrupts that cycle. An interruption often feels uncomfortable before it feels peaceful. That's the paradox. Some gay men leave emotionally available partners, not because they aren't loved, because they can't feel the intensity they've associated with love for years. Intensity and intimacy aren't twins. Sometimes they're strangers pretending to know each other. Real intimacy often feels ordinary, predictable, quiet. And if your emotional history taught you that love must always be earned, quiet can feel terrifying, because nothing seems to be happening. No guessing. No chasing. No emotional decoding. Just honesty. And honesty can feel almost unreal when you've spent years translating mixed signals. Many gay men become experts in emotional translation. Reading tone. Reading pauses. Reading body language. Trying to detect rejection before it happens. It starts as protection. Eventually, it becomes exhaustion. You don't enter conversations anymore. You investigate them. You replay messages after sending them. Wonder if you revealed too much or too little. You anticipate abandonment before anyone has even considered leaving. That's not overthinking. It's emotional hypervigilance. A survival system that refuses to believe peace can last. The tragedy is that hypervigilance often disguises itself as emotional intelligence. People praise you for being perceptive, sensitive, aware, but internally, you're rarely resting. You're monitoring. Healthy love offers something unfamiliar. Rest. Not excitement. Not emotional puzzles. Just rest. And for someone whose emotional identity has been built around constant scanning, rest can initially feel like emotional absence. The body asks a dangerous question. If I'm not anxious, do I still care? That's how deeply conditioning reaches. Some relationships don't end because there isn't enough love. They end because there isn't enough emotional chaos. That sentence sounds backwards. Until you've lived it. Modern culture quietly reinforces this confusion. Movies celebrate impossible longing. Social media rewards dramatic declarations. Dating advice often mistakes emotional unpredictability for attraction. The louder the emotions, the more authentic they're assumed to be. But volume isn't depth. Anxiety isn't intimacy. Obsession isn't security. And emotional instability isn't proof that someone matters more. Sometimes it's proof your nervous system hasn't learned another language yet. Another hidden pattern appears inside identity itself. Many gay men spend years becoming acceptable. Different versions of themselves for different rooms. Different voices. Different humor. Different levels of honesty. Shape-shifting becomes survival. The first is conscious. Later, it's automatic. Eventually, you stop asking who likes the real you, because you're no longer sure which version that is. Healthy love quietly disrupts this performance, because someone who genuinely accepts you creates a new problem. You can no longer hide behind adaptation. You have to be seen, completely, and being fully seen can feel more frightening than being rejected. Rejection hurts. Exposure changes identity. That's why some people unconsciously create distance exactly when relationships become emotionally safe. Not because they want to leave. Because staying requires surrendering the emotional armor that kept them alive. The armor isn't evil. It was necessary. It protected younger versions of you. But protection that never leaves eventually becomes isolation. The hardest emotional habits aren't the painful ones. They're the familiar ones. Familiar pain often feels safer than unfamiliar peace. That's why reassurance sometimes never feels enough. One compliment becomes temporary relief. Then doubt returns. One loving conversation. Then another internal investigation. Nothing the other person does ever fully reaches the wound. Because the wound wasn't created by them. It was created by years of emotional uncertainty that slowly became part of your identity. Validation helps. but it cannot permanently replace emotional safety inside yourself. Otherwise, every relationship becomes an endless negotiation with fear. Fear of becoming too much. Fear of becoming replaceable. Fear of becoming emotionally forgettable. Those fears don't disappear because someone says they love you. They disappear much more quietly, by experiencing consistency over and over again. Consistency isn't exciting. It rarely goes viral. It doesn't produce dramatic stories. But consistency slowly teaches the nervous system something revolutionary. Not everyone leaves. Not every silence means rejection. Not every disagreement predicts abandonment. Love doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it simply keeps showing up. Again and again. Without demanding performance. Without demanding perfection. Without asking you to earn your place every single day. That kind of love can feel strangely undeserved. Because somewhere along the way, many people learned that love should cost something. Pain. Confusion. Waiting. Proving. Healthy love asks for something much harder. Receiving. Receiving without suspicion. Receiving without immediately searching for hidden conditions. Receiving without preparing for the moment it disappears. That is far more difficult than chasing. Because chasing feels active. Receiving feels vulnerable. Perhaps that's why healthy love feels wrong at first. Not because something is missing. Because something unfamiliar has finally arrived. A relationship where your nervous system isn't constantly negotiating survival. A relationship where silence isn't punishment. Where honesty isn't dangerous. Where vulnerability isn't immediately weaponized. That kind of love doesn't erase old emotional conditioning overnight. But it slowly offers something many people have never truly experienced. Emotional rest. And maybe that's the deepest misunderstanding about love. We think we're searching for someone who makes us feel more, when in reality, many of us are searching for someone who finally allows us to feel less. Less fear. Less performance. Less monitoring. Less guessing. Less survival. Because the healthiest love doesn't constantly ask for your attention. It quietly gives your mind permission to stop protecting itself. And for someone who's spent years believing love always requires vigilance, that peace can feel almost unbelievable, until one day, finally feels like home.